everyone, I'm Allie. Join me in creating this nice Tracey bracelet. The Tracey bracelet is going to feature some 4mm bicones down the center, but remember you can always trade it up or change it up, going bigger or smaller with seed beads as well as crystal sizes, or even switch out a pearl in the middle of these 2 rows of our Hubble Stitch. If you need any materials, look below the video. In the description, there's a link there to get back to our website, which will link to other helpful videos as well as the materials that are used in this specific design. Gather up all your beads and let's get started. So to go in now and create our Tracey bracelet, we're going to be working with our Hubble Stitch. So I'm working with 2 rows of Hubble Stitch. And what we're going to do as we work with these 2 rows of Hubble Stitch is kind of do a ombre with our 4mm bicones. So I have the Montana, the Sapphire, Emerald, and then the Indigo Light. And I'm working with 2 sizes of 8 OC beads just for simplicity. There are so many variations that you can make to this bracelet, and it's really flexible and forgiving if you want to do it as a necklace, bracelet, or you could even do it as an anklet. If you want to downgrade from 8 OC beads, you could always use 11s and some smaller crystals as well. We're going to begin by doing 2 rows of our 2 rows basically of our Hubble Stitch with the crystal in between. I'm going to start out with a grouping of 3 beads, 1 silver, followed by 2 of our bronze colored beads. I'm going to let them lay down and I'm going to sew back through the silver as well as the bronze and come on out through that galvanized dark color there. I'm going to add 1 more silver bead and come down through that second bronze colored bead. So you can see now you have what I always call my little foosball player. Here's the bottom of his pants, his right elbow pad, left elbow pad, and his head. We're going to go in now, add 1 of our crystals, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to add 2 bronze, followed by 1 silver. We're going to let that drop next to that first little right angle weave unit. And just like we did previously, we're going to sew back through bead number 1, and I'm going to let my thread and needle exit between the 2 bronze beads. Give a nice tight pull to make sure you're pulling your thread. Nice tight pull so you don't see a lot of extra thread. I have my silver pants on, my shoulder pads on. I'm going to add the head here, adding a 4th bead and sewing down bead number 2. Give a nice tight pull, and that's going to tighten it up so you have your 2 little foosball players there with our crystal in the middle. We're going to go on now and add a 2nd row onto our first of our 2 columns. I'm going to circle around, going through bead number 3, which is that silver bead, going through bead number 1, which is that first bronze bead that we added, and I'm going to come out through bead number 4, which is that silver bead that we added. What was the top of the last row is going to become the bottom of the next row. So from here, I'm going to add 2 of my bronze color. I already have my silver, so I'm adding beads number 1 and 2. I'm going to sew back through bead number 3, which is that silver bead that my thread is coming out of. Let those beads kind of lay to the side in that Y. Sew up through bead number 1. And after you sew up through bead number 1, that's when you're going to add bead number 4, which is our silver bead, and then sew down through bead number 2. From here, I'm going to add my next crystal, that sapphire color, and then I'm going to add 2 more of my bronze beads right after it. We're going to link those to the bead on the opposite side, that silver, of that Hubble Stitch row. I'm going to sew through the silver bead in towards the interior of the bracelet, towards the crystal, connecting that as bead number 3 in this Hubble Stitch row. I'm going to sew back up through bead number 1, which is that first bronze, coming out before bead number 2. Give a nice tight yank on your thread, not your needle, your thread at this point, and you're going to add in another silver bead, which is bead number 4, and go down bead number 2. Once again, we're going to circle around, coming back up so we're out bead number 4. Sewing back through now bead number 3, up through bead number 1 of that bronze bead, and now out through silver bead number 4. Now I'm going to flip this in my hand because you'll be able to see how much quicker you can do it as you flip the design. So 2 bronze go on as I'm coming out bead number 1, or bead number 4. I'm going to go, after adding those 2 bronze, into bead number 4, which is now 3 of this new stitch, up through bead number 1, add a silver, and come down bead number 2. We're going to add our 3rd color, which is going to be that indigo-like color. Grab 2 more of my bronze beads and sew into bead number 3, which is going to be that silver bead from the previous row, sewing toward the crystal. Let them lay down tight. Sew back up through bead number 1. And as I do this, I usually then, once I get to the end, I'll add my silver. So down through bead number 2, and then I turn it in my hand because I like sewing towards the left. So I'm going to spin around here, always going back then, back up through bead number 1 and coming out bead number 4. All right, I'm going to do one really fast here. Ready? 2 beads on, go through my silver, come back up through bead number 1 of that bronze bead, give a nice tight yank on your thread, add a silver bead, come down through the bronze bead number 2. Once you're through there, you're going to pick up your 4th crystal color, 2 bronze beads, come back through silver from the previous row of the Hubble stitch, up through the 1st bronze bead, add a silver, just like we did on the other side, so down through bead number 2, and then to be able to do the next row, we need to circle around, so we're coming out the top. Circling through bead number 3, which is our silver bead, up through bead number 1, which is our bronze, and out through silver. And we're going to switch and continue on, getting longer and longer with that nice ombre look of my crystals getting darker and darker in the design. Sometimes technology is your friend and sometimes it's not. So I'm actually re-recording this because it recorded without any sound. So I have my finished bracelet here that I kept going, and attached the clasp to the end here. So I'm going to show you just with this little short section. It's going to be the exact same depending on how long you get. And when you're going to attach your infinite clasp here. I'm going to show you how we're going to attach the clasp. When I get to the end, I'll take my stop bead off and we'll repeat the exact same to get the tongue on the other side. So I have my infinite clasp here, which has a nice soldered ring attached to it, which is great because you don't have to worry then about thread coming out through that loop. And rather than stepping up into the silver bead here to continue on with my next row, and this is just repetitive over and over, I'm going to add my clasp. My clasp is going to start by adding 1 8/0 seed bead, sewing through my clasp, adding another 8/0 seed bead, and then I'm going to sew into that 8/0 on the opposite side in the exact same fashion. So as coming up through that 8/0, I'm sewing down through the 8/0 on the other side. So you can see how you get that kind of nice fit look. From here, I'm going to sneak through my crystal, sneak up through my 8/0 seed bead, go over through that 8/0 crystal, 8/0 clasp, 8/0, and down, and then you have that clasp reinforced. Sewing down into that last unit of Hubble stitch then, what I'll do is I'll sew my bracelet down, or my thread down, into the stitch. So I'm going to sew down towards the end of the project here, a couple passes, making sure that when you're ending thread, that you are repeating through that Hubble stitch, going through and making sure you don't see any extra thread ends. And then when you get next to a silver bead, you're going to want to sew underneath what I call the bridge thread, a thread that connects one bead to another, and you're going to make a loop. That loop then, take your needle and thread, sew through it once, pulling it a little bit smaller, sew through it twice, and then pull it nice and tight against the project. That's going to get you a nice kind of doubled square knot there right next to the project. So back through the design a little bit more, separating your thread end from the knot. Right next to one of the silver beads again, take your wire or your thread burner here, burn off the extra thread and burn it flush towards the project. Same thing is going to happen when you get ready to add your extra end on the end here too. Same thing with the tongue, coming out to that bronze bead, adding 2, going down into that bronze bead till you have that nice finished closer of the infinite clasp to wear your fun Tracey bracelet named after our photographer Genevieve's mom who likes blues and crystals. Thanks so much for joining me and watching this Tracey bracelet. Remember, there are so many different varieties that you can do, adding in bolder colors of crystals, 11Os and 8Os, or even switching to 11Os and some 2mm crystals. You can run pearls down this middle, or even gemstones would look awesome. Remember, if you do any modifications, go ahead and comment below the video. Also, we love the comments to make sure we're on the right track and producing the right content for you. As always, I hope you found this video very inspirational, and stay tuned for more designs from us at Potomac Beads.